Hi, Mark Gilbert here. Thanks for clicking in. This particular video is entitled Experiencing a Higher Love. And like all our videos on this channel, they're designed to give you tools and ideas for assisting with our spiritual evolution. In this particular video, I want to introduce you to the idea that we can experience different levels of love in our human experience, and that we are not simply at the whims of love happening to us, but that we have personal choice in choosing to love. In addition, I want to get into your awareness the concept of higher levels of love and what that really feels like, and give you some tips on how to develop and cultivate that experience of higher love in your life. Now, you might be saying to yourself, isn't love simply something that happens to me? I might meet a person and fall in love, or I'm in love with somebody and then all of a sudden I don't have that loving feeling anymore and I'm out of love. So the common perception with a lot of humans is that we don't have a level of personal choice in the emotion of love. It's something that just simply happens to us. What I'm inviting you to consider in this particular video is that in circumstances where you're feeling love, you have a choice. You have a choice to choose love or a choice not to choose love. In addition to you being a choice regarding the feeling of love in your life, you also have different levels of the experience of love as well. Quick way of thinking about this is thinking about the people in your life that you currently have care and concern for. Say your coworkers or people that you go to school with or who are around your fringes of your daily affairs, and you have a sense of care for them. Sense into what that feeling feels like. It's probably a level of love, but not a deep, deep love, if you're like most folks. But as you move closer to your individual life, to the people who are around you and you feel a greater sense of connection with, this could be your parents, your siblings, your children, your grandchildren, key best friends, there's a greater sense of love for these people as they get closer into your individual life. And then probably at the very closest level are people like your significant other, your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, maybe even a pet that you've had, one that you felt deep, deep love for. There are those individuals at the core of your life that you have great feelings of love for, but as you move beyond, outward, away from you, there's levels of love that are different and different as you move outward. To the sense that if you've been able to cultivate the sense of love for people that you don't even know, a love for life in general, life on earth, that sense of love is a little bit different for you. There are different levels then. So you can see that sort of spectrum of love that exists for you. But as we talk about levels of love, one of the ways I like to look at it, and I wrote about this in my book, Be Yourself, Evolving the World Through Personal Empowerment, is that we can use Maslow's hierarchy and the feeling of love and match it with the hierarchy and to see how our motivation for love can differ in particular circumstances. Now, in Maslow's hierarchy, we know that the lowest levels are our physiological needs, and we can have love for some other that is driven purely by physiological need, a sexual need, for example, that is driving us to love some particular person. But as we move up the pyramid of Maslow, from physiological needs to safety and security needs, we could see that in a relationship that we feel a sense of love for somebody because they're giving us a sense of security, that we feel safer because we have this person in our lives. Next up is the loving belongingness needs level. Oftentimes people, when they think about love in Maslow's hierarchy, they tend to think that love is purely motivated at this love and belongingness level. But what I'm hoping you're seeing in this description is that love can be motivated by physiological needs, safety and security needs, and then love and belongingness is really a sense that I want to feel connected. I want to feel a sense of something grander with other people, that I want to feel part of the band, the tribe. And so to that degree, we often feel a need to have a loving relationship as part of being someone who fits in with others, that there's almost an expectation that we have, that we grow up and get married and have kids. So that expectation that's on us and the desire to belong, love and belongingness, drives us often into desiring and seeking key relationships that are loving. But even beyond that, at the higher level of Maslow, the next level up is self-esteem. And on his self-esteem needs, we can also be driven by the sense that maybe only in a loving relationship, if I am receiving love, do I feel like I have a sense of self-esteem. That if I don't have a loving relationship, that my esteem may be low. So we could feel that all our other lower needs are met, but self-esteem may be the one that is driving the desire for love. Now, as we move into self-actualization and self-transcendence, the higher levels in Maslow's hierarchy, we're actually switching from two tiers of needs. And this is critical, because what I want you to really get at is not so much to try to identify, well, is my love in the love and belongingness area, or is it in the self-esteem area, or is it in the physiological need area, or is it in the area for safety? It's less important that you recognize that than to recognize that your love is driven by any of these lower levels. Because at these lower levels, Maslow pointed out that our motivation was to fill a hole in ourselves. That whenever we're motivated by these lower levels on the hierarchy, we're feeling like there is something lacking in our life, and that we're seeking something outside of ourselves to fill that particular hole. So if I'm seeking a loving relationship out of a sense of internal lack, then I am, in the old words of the Jerry Maguire movie, seeing you as someone who can, quote unquote, complete me. You're filling the hole that is within me. In all of these cases of lower level needs, we have different motivations that are driving us to obtain your love so that it can fill this vacancy that we feel within ourselves. On the other hand, Maslow pointed out that when we move above those base levels and into the second tier of levels in his hierarchy, self-actualization and self-transcendence, that we're driven by a sense of being, by a sense of fullness. There's not a hole in our life. There's not some hole or vacancy that we're trying to fill through that love, but we already feel a sense of fullness. We already feel that we are complete and whole in and of ourselves. And it's from that sense of fullness that we wish to give love, that we see others out there as ones that we want to shower our love upon. So there's a difference, and this is what I want you to really see, is that at the lower levels of our needs, when we're driven by lack, I seek love from others to fill a hole within myself. But when we're driven by a sense of fullness, then we give our love to others without concern for their love in return. The question to really ask yourself is, what's motivating your love? In your life right now, where are you being motivated? Are you being motivated by a sense that there is a hole within you and another person is going to fill that hole? And if that's the case, then you become attached to that person and them acting and being in a certain way in order to give you the love that you feel that you need so that you can then give them the love back. It's like some grand bargain that you're doing with this person. And if you sense that your love in any way is a bargain where you're giving love in order to receive love and that this is making you feel complete in the process, then you're coming from a lower level in the stages of love. At these lower levels, we look at the other person almost as an object. We focus on their humanness. Do their physical characteristics turn us on? Do they have the income and resources to support us? Are the physical aspects of their life something that we wish to mesh our lives in? We look at their life and their package, all of their humanness, their self as a person and their story and all of their beliefs. And we look at that and say, does the pattern and story of my lives mesh with their life in the right way that we can be in this loving relationship? At the lower levels of love, we're focusing on both our humanness and the other person's humanness and looking to see that these human stories are going to come together in the right way. On the other hand, when we move to higher levels of love, we look at the other person not so much with their humanness, but with their spiritual nature, the truth of who they are. Yes, they're really a human being who is going through this human experience, but we also look through that to see their spiritual essence, to see that they're a person who was born onto this planet to move through this human experience in order to grow through it and to ultimately thrive and to become all that they can be as this spiritual being moving through this human experience. And we see that our care and concern for them is something that wants to give love to them in support of them moving through this evolutionary path as they move from their lower level needs to their higher level needs and to become thriving in who they are, to find their inner calling and to give their gifts, to live the highest possible life they can be. That's what we truly want for them when we are driven not by holes within ourselves, but from a fullness within ourselves. When we can see ourselves as these spiritual beings that are moving through this lifetime and are striving for the highest levels of our life, we want to strive to the highest levels of love in our life, which means that we want to create loving relationships where the other person doesn't complete us, but we're giving love to them in a manner that allows them to want the best for their lives. Critical in seeing and wanting the best for another person is to recognize that you cannot own them, you cannot claim them, you cannot be attached to them. Oftentimes at the lower levels we feel that we have to have that person and we glob onto them and must keep them in our lives. But when we move to the higher levels of love, we look at that person as that spiritual being that they are. And we want to give them love in such a way that even if they feel like they must leave us physically and go out into the life and do other things that don't include having us in their day-to-day lives, we have to love them so much that we let them go, that we set them free from our particular lives and let them live what they need to live and do and be who they need to be. If we cling to them to maintain them in our own lives, we're still coming from a sense of hole and lack, and we're wanting to hold them back. Higher love calls us to love people and want the best for them, even if that best means they need to leave us in this particular moment. I know that I've had both of these experiences in my life. I know that I've had relationships where I felt that the other person was filling a hole within me and I clung to them. But I've also moved to the stage where I can see and know and want the best for the other person. And that's what I'm calling you to consider in this moment. You know, in a sense, we're really talking about two levels of love. One is conditional and one is unconditional. If you've ever experienced unconditional love, then you know that it's quite different, that you want the best for the other no matter what they're doing and being. You know, one of the greatest levels of unconditional love for myself, beyond my current key relationship with my wife, Mary, is a dog that I had named Harmony. And I've written and spoken about Harmony in other places, but I'll simply say that this chocolate lab was in my life for 14 and a half years. And in the last few years of her life, as she became older and infirm and less able to move around freely, I felt such a deep sense of love for her no matter what she did in her life, that there was nothing I would not have done for her. That deep feeling within me that wanted to give to her, even to the point that when she needed to leave the physical form, and as tough as that was for me, I knew that it was the best thing for her and her spirit to release her and to let go of any clinging that I might have. And it's the same with us. If you've ever had the experience of unconditional love, is the desire for us to seek and manifest that sense of love that loves others without conditions. They don't have to do or be anything for us simply to express our love. When we can move to a state of unconditional love, that's when we're truly experiencing a higher love in our life. So the question then becomes, how can we cultivate and develop a higher pattern of unconditional love in our life? Critical in our spiritual evolution is recognizing that we're always at choice. We're at choice in every relationship. People can become addicted to the feeling of falling into love. And I know we've all known people, and perhaps in our own lives, we've fallen in love, we've fallen out of love, we've left the person, and then sought another person, another circumstance to fall in love again. And that feeling of falling in love is so interesting, and it's part of the human story and the human experience as these spiritual beings going through this human life. But at a certain point, we have to recognize it for what it is. It's an experience that we're going through, but we're always at choice and on the other side of it, that we can choose to continue to love that person even when that strong emotional sense of love that we fell into dissipates. As it fades, we can move into a higher level of love where we recognize that other person for who they truly are. This spiritual being moving through this planetary experience that is seeking to thrive and to become all they can be. And if we can truly love them at that level, knowing that we're whole and complete in and of ourselves, then we can move to a higher level of love in the relationship with that person. Another key point about being at choice is to choose to love someone even if they're not going to be with us physically. Many of us have had the experience of someone breaking up with us. And when that occurs, the feeling that we have is, okay, I'm not going to love that person anymore. Oh, I loved them and now I don't love them because they broke up with me. But at the higher level of love, when somebody walks out of your life and you love them, if you love them from the higher level, seeing their spiritual being, knowing that something in them is calling them to continue their next experience that might not be in interactions with you physically, when you love them at that level, you bless them and let them go. You can continue to love them even if they're not physically in your lives. This is true even for somebody that you may have been married to for many years and you let them go. Do you want the best for them or the worst for them? All too often people hold resentments because you left me. But the higher love says, we've learned what we needed to learn through this time together. We're spiritual beings both moving through this life, and I want the best for you. And that best is seeing you happy and learning what you need to learn, even if it's no longer with me. That's a very tough but mature thing to do, if you can do it. If you can move to the space of releasing that person from your day-to-day life, but continuing to love them, then you have moved to recognizing and knowing the higher stages of love that we're talking about in this video. One point I want to stress is that loving someone from a higher level doesn't mean keeping someone physically in your life who's causing you emotional or physical harm. We should always have healthy boundaries with anyone who is so stuck in their story and their smallness that they're causing any kind of physical harm to you or emotional harm. If they are, you should have healthy boundaries, maintain those boundaries, keep that person from causing you any harm. As you set up that boundary, that doesn't mean you have to hate them, though. You can continue to love them for the person that they are and recognizing that they're making wrong choices, that they have learned wrong patterns, that whatever it is in their life that has led them to be this abusive person, you can acknowledge that, see it, but keep them from you so that there's no harm caused to you. So how can you cultivate the experience of this higher love in your life? First thing to keep in mind is that it's not an off-on switch. It's more like a gradient where if you're down on the end of the continuum where you're continuously in lower stages of love, where they're dependent upon the other person meeting some need that you feel that you're lacking, that you have attachments to the person, etc., the more you can turn that down and turn up the level of seeing the other person as a spiritual being, wanting the best for them, loving them no matter whether they stay with you or not, or making that shift is not a switch one level off and turn on the higher. It's more and more begin to switch from feeling like you need love to complete you to coming from a sense of completeness to give love. It's not about receiving the love, it's more about giving the love. The more you can make that switch, and it's a gradual thing in your life, then the more that you are going to be experiencing that higher love in your life. So how can you do that? Let's look at some tips. The very first thing to consider is looking at where are you motivated? Looking at your love in your life right now, and is it motivated by a sense of lack? Is it motivated by a sense of bargaining? Is it motivated by an attachment to another person and them filling some hole in you by them loving you? If any of these things apply to you, then it's important that you become aware that that's occurring so that you can start slowly moving away from that level of love. The second tip is to Begin to cultivate seeing the other person not as a physical, material being only, but as the spiritual being that they really are. Yes, they've gone through this story of their life. Yes, they may still be stuck in their story or their egoic needs or lower level needs. Yes, they may have beliefs that are holding them back from being who they are fully. But they're still at their essence a spiritual being that you're connected to through the oneness of all of life. And the more that you can begin to see that, the more that you're going to begin to be able to cultivate that sense of the higher love. The third tip is to begin to affirm that you want the best for that other person. As you begin to see that they are these spiritual beings, want them to develop and grow. This is not to say, hey, you've got to grow for me to give you my love, etc. This is not about any more bargaining. This is simply about looking at that other person and recognizing their spiritual nature and begin affirming that you want the highest for them. You want them to find their life calling and live it. You want them to fill all of their needs so that they come from a sense of fullness. You want them to find the right love that is what they want for their lives. You want them to thrive. 4 is to cultivate that feeling of higher love in your life in more and more moments. A few minutes ago, we talked about trying to sense that higher level of unconditional love. And whenever you've had a sense of unconditional love in your life, tap back into that feeling and know what it feels like to love some person, some pet, whatever, in that unconditional way where they don't have to do anything for you to love them. Tap into that feeling and try to grow it and attach it to your feelings and other relationships as well, so that you can love without regard for the person's choices. And the 5th and final step here is to know that you are loved. Know, too, that you are a spiritual being that is truly loved. One of my best friends likes to talk about the fact that the most important thing you can feel is a sense of self-love, that there is a love for you, not in an egoic way, but in a sense that you know that you are the spiritual being that's a part of the oneness of all of life, and that all of life is manifesting for you in greatness and grandness and glory. And if you can do that, you know that you are loved. The very nature of this life is giving love back to you, that there is this perfect energetic flow of love at all times. You're not somebody who has a hole in you that is seeking love to fill the hole, but instead, by you being a divine being, you love yourself and allow love to flow through you. You know that the givingness of this universe is continuously giving you love, and that you are filled with love continuously. When that love overflows in your awareness and in your sense of who you are, then you can begin to give from that overflow to others more and more. And when you're doing that, you are truly experiencing a higher love. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you benefited from it. I'll leave you with an affirmation that hopefully will be helpful in developing and living and experiencing a higher love. I'd ask you to every day affirm, I am a loving presence. I am a loving presence. Go forth and be love in your life today. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. There's a similar video right here next to my face if you want to click on it. Also, if you want to get notifications of future videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the bottom left-hand corner. If you'd like to contact me, email me at the address on the screen or drop me a comment in the comment field below on YouTube. Thanks.